Today I'm going to talk about what pornography addiction is and how to recover from it. My name is Russell Beebe. I'm a certified sex addiction therapist and recovery coach. So let's first talk about what pornography addiction is, or porn addiction. So it's really three things. Very, very simple. The first thing is a physical compulsion. So in other words, when a person sits down, starts looking at pornography, they get sucked into this ritual, this trance-like state. So this was true for me. I would sit down, I'd start looking at pornography, and I'd click away and click away and click away and click away, and hours and hours and hours would go by. And then, eventually it was over, and then I'd kind of wake up and be like, what just happened? How did 2 or 3 hours go by? And it was because I had a physical compulsion to it. Just like an alcoholic who takes like one drink, after that one drink, they can't stop. They just go and go and go and go and go. And usually what happens over time is bad things happen. The second part of the addiction is a mental obsession with it. So after I would go through a series of acting out, I would promise myself, I'd feel shame, guilt, despair, all that stuff. I'd promise myself I'm never going to do it again, right? And I believed myself. If you hooked me up to a lie detector, I would pass the lie detector. I genuinely wanted to stop for good, but I had a mental obsession with it. So what would happen is 20 minutes later, 2 hours later, usually like 2 or 3 days later is really where it came. Sometimes it was a week. Sometimes I could stop for a month. But what would happen is I would just get this thought.
It'd be nice to sit down and look at some pornography,
and it would sort of eat away at me, and that would grow into this obsession. And eventually the mental obsession would win out, and I'd start acting out again. I'd start looking at the pornography, get sucked into that trance and that ritual of acting out. And the third part is something I call restless, irritable, and discontent, which is really to say the underlying issue. People look at pornography for relief. I did it for relief. I would sit down and start looking at pornography. I'd maybe feel stress, or like some restless, irritable, or I was resentful, some anxiety, some depression, and I would sit down and I'd start looking at pornography, and it would kind of be like, and it was just really weird and really shameful to think, but I got relief from it because it's a very intense sexual experience that floods your brain with dopamine and pleasure chemicals. Let's face it, sex is a very pleasurable experience. It's tied to an instinct. It's tied to procreation, and none of that is bad. It just, for a porn addict, it becomes something that they actually need in order to feel better. And so the real key here is the acting out behaviors are just a symptom of a deeper issue, and real recovery comes from treating the underlying issue. When we heal that, what happens is the mental obsession goes away, and it becomes easier to stay away from the pornography. It's kind of weird. It's like you've got the physical compulsion going on and a mental obsession. That's the addiction. You don't have a lot of control over that. But what we do have control over is to get those supports stop long enough to look inwardly and heal the underlying issues. And when we do that, we start to feel better internally. We have less need for that relief that comes from looking at pornography, and the obsession goes away, and it becomes much easier. I don't obsess about acting out anymore. I can go through day to day without that gut-wrenching obsession to act out and acting out over and over again, because I've healed the underlying issues enough that I don't need that relief. So how do you recover from this? There's a couple of things, and these are all the things that we do in my program. The first thing is that you establish what sexual sobriety is. So for a porn addict, that means stopping looking at all pornography, but also looking at any other acting out behaviors, infidelity, compulsive masturbation. None of all this is bad, but for an addict it can be. So it's really important to establish what's the bottom line, what's the sexual compulsive behaviors, all the behaviors that we want to stop, that if we break those, that's a break of our sexual sobriety. But then also to look at the gray areas. What are the things that make us susceptible to acting out that may not be a break of our sobriety, but it put us in jeopardy of acting out in our bottom lines? But the point in this first part is to first clarify what sexually sober is. And then what we do once we establish what sexual sobriety is, we create a recovery routine. We do this in the second phase of my program, where the person just really takes a look at what are the things that I do on a daily basis that cultivate recovery. Maybe that's going to 12-step groups. Maybe that's going to the groups inside the program. Maybe that's working on the curriculum. We have a written curriculum inside the program. What does that routine look like? Something other than like hitting the snooze over and over again in the morning, waking up, being late to work, and then acting out. You know what I mean? Getting up, doing healthy activities, exercising, praying and meditating. If you like to pray, that's great. Having a routine and knowing what you're going to do on a daily basis. Just like somebody would do if they're training for a marathon, or what somebody would do if they have an illness. They have to, if you had cancer, you'd have to go to the doctor and you'd have to, do the chemotherapy and do the things that your doctor suggests. The same thing with porn addiction. There has to be a routine that supports recovery, and we help you outline that in our program. And then the third thing we do, and we do this in my program, we take a look at those underlying issues. We do that through written processes, asking specific questions, but a lot of it comes down to looking internally at fears and false beliefs that we have and starting to reframe them. So it really comes down to this sort of mindful awareness that we cultivate by writing and answering certain questions about our lives, like the top fears that we have, and really starting to take a look at what is my internal reaction to life that I need relief from. And what we do is we start to think differently, we start to act differently, we start to feel better internally, and in doing so, we don't need that relief that comes from looking at pornography. And then the fourth thing we do is, once we're in a recovered state, which really just means the person has stopped their behavior for a good amount of time, 2 or 3 months, they haven't been acting out on their bottom line behaviors, and they have relief from the mental obsession. Once they're in that state, it's like, what do we need to do to maintain that? So that's where we take what we started in the recovery routine and turned it into a relapse prevention plan. In other words, what do you need to do long term in order to maintain this? So we do this in a written format. Again, just like the recovery routine, what are the things I need to do on a daily basis? Staying connected with other people in recovery, going to meetings, continuing to write in the way that we teach people in the curriculum, so that when things come up, you get a resentment, you get a fear, you can write, share it with another person in recovery, and move on with your day. And you stay long term, you stay in that state of self-awareness and personal growth. And the good news is that it's win-win, because the root of recovery is healing underlying issues, and what that does is it makes us feel better, think better, behave better, and overall our lives get better. We cultivate a healthy life. So the good news is that in the relapse prevention plan, it's not like a drag, like, oh, I have to do recovery for the rest of my life and these are the things that I have to do. It becomes fun and awesome and interesting. Hey, if you're liking this video and you're interested in talking with us about working with us, we have a 12-week program, and then people are able to continue beyond that as well. We have a 12-week recovery coaching program, Jumpstart. Any men with porn addiction who have found that they haven't been able to stop. We'll show you exactly what to do. We go much deeper into what I was talking about in this video. If you're interested in finding out more information about that, go into the link in the description or around the video here somewhere. It'll take you through our website where you could schedule a call with one of my recovery advisors, and we'll see what's going on with you. You'll learn a lot regardless of whether you work with us or not. You learn a lot about recovery. We'll give you some tips and point you in the right direction. If it makes sense to have you come into the program, we'll talk about what that would look like. So click through that link below, schedule a call, and we'll talk soon.